Take a look at this CCTV camera. A young woman walks out of a bar on Oxford Square in Oxford, Mississippi. She is alone. She turns and moves away from the camera. Within seconds, she is gone from the frame. That is the last time any security camera ever captured Ole Kostial alive. Then the cameras pick up something else. At 12:46 a.m., a truck appears on West Oxford Loop, the road that leads directly toward the retreat. Investigators would later identify that truck as belonging to Brandon Thiesfeld, a 22-year-old fellow Ole Miss student from Fort Worth, Texas. 28 minutes later, at 1:14 a.m., the same camera catches the same truck again. Same road. But this time, it is heading in the opposite direction, away from the retreat, away from Oxford. After that moment, no camera picks up Ole Kostial again. Not on the road, not at a gas station, not anywhere. If you want to know the full story of what investigators uncovered and the digital trail that led straight back to one person, stay with me, because this case goes much deeper than one night.
Kostial was reportedly shot 8 times, but investigators aren't confirming that allegation. Tonight, as police search for a motive, surveillance photos obtained by News 4 show Thiesfeld at a South Memphis gas station Monday, 2 days after Ole Kostial's body was found.
Before we talk about what happened at Sardis Lake, you need to know who Ole Kostial was, because she was not just a name in a headline. Ole grew up in suburban St. Louis, Missouri. She was a cheerleader, a long-distance runner, a swimmer, and an honor society member. She was the kind of person who showed up for her team, for her friends, for anyone who needed her. A friend from 6th grade, Casey Hendrickson, described her as someone who was always so positive through every situation, no matter how crappy it was. She would say, "This is okay. The sun will come out tomorrow." Another close friend put it more simply. She said Ole was just too nice. That was not a criticism. It was an observation. Ole gave people the benefit of the doubt every single time. She never wanted anyone to feel left out. At her high school prom, she invited a friend who had no date to ride along with her group, just so that friend would not have to arrive alone. When Ole arrived at Ole Miss in the fall of 2016, she found exactly the life she had dreamed about. She became a founding member of Alpha Phi sorority. She started the Ole Miss Golf Club and the Running Club. She taught yoga and Pilates classes on campus. And she ran a photography account on Instagram called Sunsets by Ole, where she documented the Mississippi skies she never got tired of watching. She was a marketing major. She was building something real. In July of 2019, Ole was getting ready for her senior year. Her parents, Cindy and Keith Kostial, had just visited Oxford on July 17th to help her set up her new off-campus apartment at the retreat. They cooked meals together. They went shopping for beach-themed decor. They were making new memories. 2 days later, on the evening of July 19th, Cindy called Ole around 7 p.m. Ole had just woken up from a nap after finishing a summer school exam. She told her mother she was going to go out with some friends that night. Those were the last words Cindy Kostial ever heard her daughter say. Ole had everything ahead of her, a degree almost finished, a community that loved her, a future she was actively building. But there was one person in her life that her closest friends, the people who knew her best, had never once met. His name kept coming up the moment investigators started asking questions. Brandon Thiesfeld was 22 years old. He was from Fort Worth, Texas. He came from a comfortable family. His father was a doctor. He had played soccer, had a Christian upbringing, and had no criminal record. On paper, he looked like exactly the kind of person a university would be proud to call a student. Ole met him during freshman year, in the fall of 2016, at a bar near campus. According to her mother, Cindy, Ole was immediately drawn to him. She loved everything about Texas, and here was a boy from Fort Worth who was cute and seemed interesting. She was, in Cindy's words, head over heels. But from the very beginning, something was off. Ole invited Brandon to her sorority events. She brought him as her +1 constantly. She talked about him to her family, yet her closest friends, Morgan Hall, Elizabeth Brock, Maddie Norris, never once met him. When Maddie visited Oxford specifically hoping to meet this person Ole talked about, Brandon never showed up. Morgan Hall said plainly, "I never met him." When Brandon was eventually arrested, Morgan and Elizabeth did not even know his last name. He was a ghost in her life, present in her heart, absent everywhere else. Rex Revita, a former dorm neighbor of Brandon's, later described a very different side of him. He told reporters that Brandon was misogynistic and arrogant, a daddy's boy who constantly referenced his father's money and bragged that his dad could get him out of anything.
Was pretty much daddy's boy type. Constantly had to reference his father's money, how his dad could get him out of anything. I mean, just that attitude all the time.
Revita said Brandon made vulgar and degrading comments toward women regularly. During sophomore year, Brandon blocked Allie's phone number entirely. The reason, according to court records, was that she texted him too much when she was out at night. The rejection was devastating to her, but by junior year they were back in contact. Allie took that as a sign. She believed the reconnection meant something deeper was possible. A forensic psychologist who reviewed the case identified what was really happening. Brandon was sending just enough messages to keep Allie emotionally invested, while giving almost nothing in return. It was a dangerously lopsided dynamic, and Allie was carrying the full weight of it alone. By junior year, she was holding on to hope. Then, in April of 2019, she sent Brandon a message that changed everything. On April 12th, 2019, Allie told Brandon Thiesfeld she might be pregnant. 2 days later, on April 14th, she sent him a photo of a home pregnancy test. The result was inconclusive, a very faint line that could mean almost anything. She told him she was not sure what was happening. She said she wanted to talk about it in person. Brandon's response came quickly, and it was cold. According to court records read aloud by Assistant District Attorney Mickey Millette, Brandon told Allie that becoming a father at 22 would ruin his life. He made his position clear. There would be no child. He wanted the pregnancy ended medically, and he was not open to any other outcome. Shortly after receiving her message, our investigators found that Brandon had searched the internet for abortion services and abortion pills. He also searched the phrase, "Mother wants kid, father does not." He was not looking for a conversation. He was looking for a solution. Allie, however, was not ready to simply move on. She wanted to meet face to face. She wanted to talk through what this meant, for her, for them, for whatever future she still believed was possible. Brandon made promises. He told her he would come over. He told her they would figure it out. According to the messages reviewed by investigators, he never showed up, not once. What followed over the next several weeks was a painful, one-sided exchange. Allie sent long messages at all hours. She described drinking heavily, a full bottle of tequila, 2 bottles of champagne, 7 beers, or a glass of wine, in what appeared to be an attempt to cope, or possibly to end the pregnancy on her own. A forensic psychologist who reviewed the messages noted serious concern about the volume of alcohol she described consuming, suggesting it reflected either genuine distress or a desperate attempt to get Brandon's attention. Brandon responded hours later, sometimes the next day. His replies were brief. His position never changed. Then, in early July, Allie sent a message saying she had been bleeding and believed something was wrong. Investigators later noted this could indicate she had experienced a miscarriage, though that has not been publicly confirmed. What the autopsy did confirm was this. Allie Kostial was not pregnant at the time of her death, but that fact did not matter to Brandon Thiesfeld. On July 18th, Allie sent him a photo of her stomach with a message saying she could not pretend much longer that nothing was happening. The urgency in her messages had been building for 3 months. She needed answers. She needed him to show up. He never did, not in the way she needed. Instead, on July 12th, 6 days before that message, Brandon Thiesfeld had already made a move. He drove from Oxford back to his father's home in Fort Worth, Texas. He was not going home to think. He was not going home to talk. He went home to get a gun. On July 12th, 2019, Brandon Thiesfeld drove from Oxford, Mississippi to his father's home in Fort Worth, Texas. He told no one why he was going. At his father's house, he retrieved a .40 caliber Glock 22 pistol. Then he posted a photo of it on Snapchat with a caption that, at the time, probably looked like nothing. It read, "Finally taking my baby back to Oxford." Within days, that post would become evidence. Brandon made the drive back to Mississippi on July 16th. And what he did during that drive, and in the days that followed, told investigators everything they needed to know about what he was planning. He searched the internet for hollow-tip ammunition. He searched for tactical face masks. He looked up how to operate a Glock pistol, including what specific buttons did what. Lead investigator Jared Bundren later noted that Brandon did not even know how to properly use the weapon he had just picked up. He was learning as he went. Then came the search that stopped investigators cold. Brandon searched for methods used by serial killer Ted Bundy to lure his victims. He was not watching a documentary. He was not writing a paper. He was a 22-year-old man who had just retrieved a gun, was learning how to use it, and was now researching how one of history's most notorious killers got women to trust him. Brandon's defense attorney, Tony Farisi, later suggested these searches were unrelated to the crime, tied to general curiosity or television. Prosecutors saw them differently. To them, the searches were a roadmap, built one click at a time. On July 17th, for the first time since April, Brandon reached out to Allie. He initiated contact. He asked to meet. After months of silence, broken promises, and ignored messages, he was suddenly interested again. Allie responded. On July 18th, just before 2 a.m., he texted her saying they could figure it out and asked whether her apartment was private. The following day, on July 19th, the last full day of Allie's life, he texted again asking if she would be home so he could visit. That evening, at 9:06 p.m., he sent another message. He asked her to let him know when she got back from going out. Then he asked again, was her house private? District Attorney Ben Creekmore later explained what those messages really meant. From Allie's perspective, Brandon was finally ready to talk. He was coming to work things out. She had been waiting months for exactly this. But according to prosecutors, Brandon was not asking about privacy because he wanted an intimate conversation. He was asking because he did not want any witnesses. He had the gun. He had done the research. He had made the plan. Now he just needed to know she would be alone. If you have stayed with this story this far, please take a second right now to subscribe and hit the notification bell. There is a lot more to this case, and what investigators found next is something you will not want to miss. On the morning of July 19, 2019, Allie Kostial sat in a summer school classroom and finished an exam. Her instructor, Ashley Morgan, saw her turn it in sometime before 1:15 p.m. Allie walked out of the room. That was the last time her professor ever saw her. She went home, and she slept. Around 7 p.m., her phone rang. It was her mother, Cindy. Allie had just woken up from her nap. They talked briefly. Cindy asked what she was going to do that night. Allie said she was going out with some friends. It was a normal conversation between a mother and her daughter. Neither of them had any reason to think it would be their last. And that evening, Allie made her way to Oxford Square, the stretch of bars and restaurants at the heart of downtown Oxford. She went to Funky's, a popular spot near campus known for its dim lights, loud music, and colorful drinks. She spent the evening there, the way she had done many times before. At 11:52 p.m., a security camera outside the bar captured her walking out alone. She was not running. She was not distressed. She called an Uber and rode home to the retreat. She arrived at 12:10 a.m. on July 20th. She made it home safely. 36 minutes later, at 12:46 a.m., a camera on West Oxford Loop picked up Brandon Thiesfeld's truck, moving in the direction of the retreat. Then, at 1:14 a.m., the same camera caught the same truck again, now heading the opposite way, away from the apartment complex. Allie was in that truck. Investigators would later confirm this through GPS and cell phone location data, which placed both of their phones traveling together away from Oxford and toward Sardis Lake. The drive was roughly 30 miles. It started on paved roads, then turned onto a dirt road that cut through complete darkness. No houses, no streetlights, no people. At the end of that road sat an abandoned fishing camp on the edge of Sardis Lake. It was the kind of place where, according to investigators, you would not be found unless someone already knew where to look. When Lafayette County deputies arrived at that location during a routine patrol on the morning of July 20th, they found 11 .40 caliber shell casings scattered in an arc around a picnic table. Cans of White Claw hard seltzer sat on the table, and nearby, Allie Kostial lay on the ground with multiple gunshot wounds to her back. About 1/3 of a mile away, in a roadside ditch, paramedics found her purse. Inside it were her Ole Miss student ID and her driver's license. Lead investigator Jared Bundren later described what the shell casing pattern told him. Brandon had been sitting across from Allie at that table. He fired once, then, as Allie tried to move, to run, to crawl, to get away, he moved with her. He circled the table. He kept firing. Between 2:15 and 2:30 a.m., a resident near Sardis Lake was outside walking their dog when they heard the shots. They were the only person close enough to hear what happened to Ali Kostial that night. No one else was there. At 6:45 a.m. on July 20th, Brandon Thiesfeld's truck appeared on camera at a convenience store in Batesville, Mississippi. He had just driven back from Sardis Lake. Ali was still lying on the ground 30 miles away. Less than an hour and 15 minutes later, at 7:56 a.m., Brandon sent a text to a friend. He said there was an exterminator at his apartment and asked if he could come over. Investigators later confirmed with the apartment manager that there was no exterminator. There never had been. It was a lie, and it was the first of several. At 8:18 a.m., Brandon searched the internet for news about Sardis, Mississippi. Then he searched for how to listen to live police scanners. He was not grieving. He was monitoring. At approximately 10:30 a.m., Lafayette County deputies on routine patrol came across something that stopped them cold. In a remote area near Buford Ridge in Harmontown, they found the body of a young woman with multiple gunshot wounds. It was Ali Kostial. She had been there for hours. While investigators were processing the scene, Brandon Thiesfeld was spending the day with friends. According to court records, he went bowling. He kept things casual. He acted like a person with nothing to hide. And through all of it, he still had the gun. On Sunday, July 21st, he brought the weapon to another friend's house. According to that friend's later statement to police, Brandon walked in carrying the pistol, unloaded it inside the house, and stayed for a while. When the friend woke up the following morning, Brandon was already gone. That same Sunday, investigators contacted Brandon and asked him to come in for a conversation. He agreed. He said he had been drinking and did not want to talk while intoxicated, but he promised to come in first thing Monday morning. 8:30 a.m. Monday morning came. 8:30 a.m. came. Brandon Thiesfeld did not. Instead of walking into a police station, he was already on the road, and investigators were about to find out exactly where he was heading. When Brandon Thiesfeld failed to show up Monday morning, investigators did not wait long. They began tracking his cell phone in real time. What they found was not a man who had forgotten the appointment or slept in. His phone was moving north on Interstate 55, the highway that runs from Oxford, Mississippi, directly toward Memphis, Tennessee. From Memphis, you can connect to Texas. He was running. Investigators moved quickly. They obtained an arrest affidavit and issued a BOLO, a be on the lookout alert, for his vehicle. The truck was not hard to identify. It had a custom vanity license plate that read TAK3IT. Within an hour or two, the Memphis Fugitive Task Force spotted it at a gas station. A dash camera captured the arrest. Brandon Thiesfeld was taken into custody without incident. Officers immediately noticed two things. There was biological evidence on his clothing, and sitting inside his truck was the .40 caliber Glock 22. The same weapon he had driven to Texas to retrieve 8 days earlier. Brandon invoked his right to an attorney and said nothing further to police, but he signed a waiver of extradition, and investigators brought him back to Mississippi. Back in Oxford, a search of his apartment turned up something that would become one of the most significant pieces of evidence in the entire case. Tucked inside was a 2-page handwritten letter addressed to his parents. In it, Brandon wrote that he was not a good person. He wrote that something in him just doesn't work. He said he had always had terrible thoughts and always had these demons. And then he wrote the line that prosecutors would later read aloud in court. I know I'm going to get caught. In August of 2019, the case went before a grand jury. The evidence was presented. The indictment came back, capital murder. Murder combined with kidnapping. Brandon Thiesfeld was now facing the death penalty. There is something important that needs to be said before we close this story. Ali Kostial was not naive. She was trusting. And those are two very different things. Being trusting is not a flaw. It is a quality that made her one of the most loved people in every room she ever walked into. The problem was never Ali. The problem was the person who used that trust as a weapon. But this case left behind a set of warning signs that are worth understanding. Not to assign blame, but because they may matter to someone watching this right now. The signs were there. The communication was almost entirely one-sided for years. Brandon kept Ali emotionally close while staying physically absent. Her closest friends had never met him. He had blocked her number. He made promises he never kept. Then, after months of silence, he suddenly reached out, right after retrieving a gun and researching how to commit crimes. District Attorney Ben Creekmore said it plainly after the case closed. He said that if Ali had known what Brandon Thiesfeld was truly capable of, she would never have gotten into that truck. Not for a single second. So here is what this case asks of all of us. Not as a lecture, but as a practical reminder. Tell someone where you're going before you go. Share your location with a friend you trust. And when the people who love you most express concern about someone in your life, take a moment to hear them out. Sometimes the people on the outside of a relationship can see what those on the inside cannot. Allie's friends carry her forward every day. They wear pink in her honor. And every time the sky turns gold and rose and deep orange at the end of the day, they think of her. The girl who chased sunsets across Mississippi and built an entire Instagram account just to share that beauty with the world. She was a founding member of her sorority, a club president, a fitness instructor, a loyal friend, a daughter who called her mother on a Friday evening just to say she was going out. That is who Ole Kostial was. Not just a case, not just a headline, a person who deserved every sunrise and every sunset still ahead of her. If this story moved you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you have not already, and leave a comment below telling us what you think should have been done differently. By the system, not by Ole. We read every single one. See you in the next one.